right, a pleasant good evening. Pleasant good evening to everyone. We must apologize for that delay in our programming because of technical issues. We do apologize about that, and we would look to rectify that going forward. So, please, guys, as you join the live, please share the live, and don't forget to put your comment in the comment section so we can check that. We'll bring on our panelists so we can continue the conversation. So, Monty.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm back here.
Right, Yusuf, and bring on Glenn
Excellent.
to the
I'm back.
platform.
Yeah,
All
Way
right,
back.
we're back.
yeah.
I'm not seeing Glenn.
I am
Yeah,
here.
look, Glenn there. Look, Glenn
Oh,
is right
good, good,
there.
good, good, good. All right. Yes, gentlemen, I do apologize about that.
Mhm.
Um, as you know, these things, you can never have control over these things.
Well,
Right.
once human beings make it, something.
So something must go wrong.
Uh,
Something must go wrong. All right. So, all right, Glenn, good. We have you back on the platform. So, all right, gentlemen, we could continue the conversation. So I'll move to Glenn because Glenn, you said that you listened to the interview. We would not mention the artist's name, but you listened to the interview that was done by a local journalist. I want to hear your thoughts because I listened to the interview as well, and that young man is saying that he met this genre here. He did not create it. So it almost seems that we are making him the scapegoat and the target when we're bigger than him. So I'll bring you on to give your perspective.
Yeah, I listened to the entire story, and in some instances, I tend to understand what he's saying, and in another breath, I do not take what it is. I mean, everybody have their life story, everybody have their experiences, and of course, he gave his life story where he has been, and to try to make a life for himself, he realized that he had that talent, and again, I think is what we gravitate to, and he spoke of making a living, and if that's the way how he gets to make a living, he will make a living, and to wear it on both sides is what we tend to glorify, is what our children and young people tend to glorify. So that is why the important thing, it goes back to us in the home as to what we accept and what we allow our children to, even if at times when they get to a stage where we have no control over them. But I think all in all, what I made of it is that we have a choice. We all have a choice, and it boils back to our children, our students, and young people making that choice. I mean, if one do not glorify him, if one do not give him all the likes that he said that he gets, the money that he gets from royalty or whatever, um then he would not be the person making that issue. And I realize that he has a following, because if I just give you a quick story, I usually work with young men, well, empowered. That was a few years ago, and we were going to have teams, and one of the teams that these guys wanted to make was the figure, the figure with that is associated with that gentleman and his gang, and I never knew about that since. And hearing that and that being unfolding to me, it says to me that it's a powerful force out there. But I would maintain that as much as we have negative forces, negative so-called powerful forces out there, we can also cling to the positive beings that surrounds us.
Okay, okay. So if I may come in here, just to touch on what Glenn was saying, that he said is he has to make a living, right? And I really want to categorically say that that's a bit of a cop out, because it's not just in the name of making a living. You can't just say, okay, you're making a living, because at the end of the day, you have people that kill people to make a living. You understand? In life, we have choices. And to go back on part of the conversation we had last week when we were speaking to that of missing teenagers, right? What we recognize is that a lot of the times, is that what we see in here is the symptoms of a larger problem, right? So in the case of young ladies, you may see young ladies looking for love elsewhere, maybe because it's missing the home or whatever the case may be, right? And it may be displayed in other ways. Could be being rebellious, you know, being promiscuous, all these different things. In the same way, with young men, you would see this longing for companionship, wanting to belong to something, and they gravitate sometimes to the lowest common denominator, right? And I'm not using that term in the context of to say that people are not redeemable, but the fact remains everybody I think is redeemable. But the fact is, if you are going to make that choice, right? As you said, Glenn, we all have a choice to be a part of a culture of spewing violent content that you know is going to be affecting young minds, right? And a byproduct of this violent content, people have lost their lives because of it. Because from what I have seen, like on YouTube and so, they use this medium to even show talk for rival gangs or whatever it is that end up in deaths at times, right? And it's sad to see that we have come to a place where our youth is glorifying, and well, I shouldn't say our youth, you know. I think as social media, sometimes we glorify so many of the wrong things. That's why sometimes they gravitate to these things. I don't know what about being a bad man or whatever it is, you know, is something so appealing, um, but it's being glorified. You understand? And this is not a culture that has been Caribbean culture. We could go way back as American culture, where we could talk about gangster rap and so, and people want to associate themselves with whether it's the not whether it's this artist or the that artist, and you know you have the East Coast, West Coast. For some reason, young men gravitate towards these kind of violent trends, you know. And I think maybe in part of this conversation, we really need to discuss,
You
right,
see, if I may,
mostly about the trend. So
that's
yeah,
why
yeah,
I indicated
yeah.
earlier that unlike before,
Hmm.
and it's true it might seem we sound like the older folks living in the past, but you could only reference what you know, in the
Yeah.
sense that growing up, you heard about peace and love. As much as there was violent music,
Mhm.
there were more of a what I would say counterbalancer or scale whereby you have about unity. Listen to the Bob and all them still relevant, and the
Yeah.
music continue. The One Love, which is one of the most, if it's not the top in the top five around the world, whether it be Germany, as the people say, all the back in Oyo, people know about it.
Yeah.
Unlike the violent music you get today, it's short lived.
Hmm. Hmm.
And again, I would make reference as we would always come back to the family and even spending more time with our youths, especially not to single out the boys, but they tend to be in the forefront of wanting to belong.
Yeah.
That we need to, whether be it as uncle, fathers, brother, whoever, spend more time in a positive way. As I would say it, I will repeat myself, it may seem insignificant, but just going to the beach, taking a swim with them, going and fish, you create more positive than negative. So there's no time to be getting involved in all these negative. And if there is, they're in a better position to make a wiser decision.
So,
Yeah.
so let me take this opportunity, Yusuf, right, to bring in Jason on this because I, as as we live in Grenada, you know, there are certain areas that have a stigma, right? Like I born and bred in Carnage area, right? So people associate because you come from Carnage, you know, this, you know, Jason, I know you are a man that has been going Uber and wherever it is. To some degree, may have a stigma as well, and maybe you could speak to that as even in growing up in those areas, how you could defy those odds and still become a valuable member of society, and not necessarily because you come from Canada or because you come from Woburn or River Road or wherever it is, you had to fall into that trap. You know?
Well, for I from Springs.
Yeah.
I've been living in Grandlands for
Mhm.
many years. I would say I grew up there.
Yeah.
The friends that I would have gone to school with, most of them, a few of them used to smoke. Their behavior was, some of this behavior was not liking, but that was in the old days where we didn't have all this the violence.
Mhm.
We have a hand fists, and that's basically it. But like the older we grow, I would have for we used to be living with that
Mhm.
love and unity, but you realize that would have just strayed from the
You sound a little low, Jason. Speak up.
you hear me you hear me a little better now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Okay, right, yeah. 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 I mean for society no, we don't live that with love. That's what we used to before. So I don't know because of social media or the the how should I put that? Because of social media and how we live now, it don't draw that positiveness in a lot of the youths today. I mean, I would look at it as from our home, some of the homes and them, some kids grow up with everything. Some kids grow up with love, some of them, some kids don't. So some
Yeah.
of them looking for the love on the outside, and that
Mhm.
would have created a lot of young men and women growing up not being the positiveness. But even though it's your mind,
Yeah.
it's your
Yeah.
mind. You could be living in a bad crowd and don't have the same bad attitude.
Mindset. Yeah. Yeah.
You understand? And the
Yeah.
mindset could be differently. It's what you want. They say sometimes in life we look at we see friends smoking. I go smoke too, but that's not the case. I could be living in a place that's smoking. I live in a lot of my friends smoke.
Mhm.
I never smoke. I don't know nothing about it.
Yeah.
You understand? So it's not what people do. You will follow. It's you, your mindset. I always say you have to be a leader, not a follower.
Right.
But
You
And
understand?
I
and but just to bring in Glenn on this here, no, and maybe you could tie this into you're talking about being a leader, not following. But what parts, right, that we can discuss here now, that parenting, right, took in us not going down those parts of the bad parts, so to speak, because I can tell you in my household. I know I can bring certain stuff home to my mother and grandmother, you know. So that in itself, you might be in an area that might be considered so quote unquote a bad area or area that have bad influence. But what about the role that proper and firm parenting play in that and guiding you those very rugged paths?
no, I am listening and I look at the topic, and for me, I tend to like to flip the script so that in every
Yeah.
negative that might point at you there are two positives that can shoot out at it. I think we talk to the effects or how it affect our young people, but well, and the public alike, but in another breath, what can happen, what are some of the things that we can do, how can we enhance, how can we help ourselves, our families, our children, the students who are placed in our care, how can we encourage them to choose wisely, and sometimes based on what they cling on to, it can flip. I mean, as a teacher, I tend to know what music and singing and so can do. So I may in while the rhythm and the beat and so might be something that is catchy, but how do you encourage them to twist this and twist that into something positive and something that they can learn. So I think the negatives are far and can be far less than the positive, and see how we can use the positives. I know in speaking speaking about being positive, what are some of the positives that are some of the things that we can do to ensure that the how it affect our children and our environment, how we can really change that. I don't know if some member of the panel can we can just spit out some ideas
Well,
as to
Sure.
how.
what I would say is this, what we can do, if it's not done, I'm speaking from my limited knowledge of being out there. Just as when we're in school, before there were programs where you have the Girl Guides, the Scouts, and similar medium, now you have cadets and so forth. We need to have more of those, and see how we could support it to have the children channeled better, whether it be even the karate self-defense classes, showing them that it's a discipline. Even the music, before there used to be music taught in school as a discipline, and we try to reward the good and positives by giving them incentive, because we all
well,
like
well,
incentives.
well,
You know?
Yusuf, that while that might be so, the groups and so, I
Mhm.
must say that I rode on a bus last Friday, and my goodness, the music that is being played, I had to be the unpopular one to ask the driver to either flip low it down, or well, to change it, because you find it all around. So we may say yes, within our groups, within let the children be in groups and so, yes, while they're in that, but even in society, how they are being exposed, even when we spoke to activities that might be at schools, and the lyrics that are being played. So I mean, we have to more or less set some standards where that is concerned, and be the unpopular one to say no, we should not be listening to this, or we should change that.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree, and it's a holistic approach. That's one aspect of it. So as they say, we all have to play our parts as society and as a people to do our
But
part. Mhm.
but in speaking of
Well,
doing one's part, right? What I think, and it speaks to solutions as well, right? Because what Glenn just said is very correct. I've been on buses already, and I've heard music being played with obscene language. And
sure.
I just recently saw a video that was sent to me that a local artist, I guess,
Yeah.
produced, right? That was extremely violent, right? Speaking to that of, it was just extreme violence and
I would
brandishing
say
web,
not just
uh,
violence,
yeah,
criminal.
yeah,
That's
and
criminal.
brandishing weapons, right? So my thing is that should we as a country, just like how we frown upon as a society, because I know as part of the laws of the country, you're not allowed to bring in certain things like, camouflage. You're not supposed to bring weapons. Pornography is still considered to be, illegal, right? I think some of this content could be deemed just the same way as somewhat illegal, and could be, once people might talk about creativity, but it's about the content, right? So can we then in turn, maybe as part of a solution, look at that as a medium, from a state level, right? Looking at, legislating against maybe certain content, because at the end of the day, we do have laws about content and lewd behavior and all this kind of thing. So I think that falls in the same bracket. What say you?
The thing is with that,
Monty,
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
implication now,
Well,
because of social media, you're providing, if you're going to be providing content for outside, we would have to look at whether there's legal ramification on what grounds could you, because there are instances where you could produce product or services for outside, but it's not relevant for inside or not applicable. So
mhm.
that might be areas, you may have to seek certain.
well, well. Let's get Jason to comment on this, but I have a bit of a pushback in that. too often, we make reference to social media, right? And the problems that social media, presents us and the challenge, right? I always make reference to some of the African countries that a lot of things are trying to be forced down the world, us as a people, whether they call us the developing countries or whatever countries, right? And it doesn't mean that everything that comes down the pipeline that has to come into our household, that has to come into our country. We as a people, I think, have a right to say this is not for us, this is not part of our culture, this is not beneficial to our society. So it's in this context I'm saying that we can now look at some of these content as just like we look at lewd behavior, or in the past we used to ban certain calypsos and so, because if it was too vulgar, derogatory. So, and maybe you could bring in Jason on this. So what say you on this issue?
But how are we solving the issue? Because remember, music are playing on buses and stuff. We don't have no control over it.
Well, that
Or
well we said, well we actually did, that's what I just said. I think it got cut out a bit, right?
yeah,
So what I was speaking to, just like how we have soca music, right? That sometimes, in the past used to be banned from being played on the radio station, right? We have,
yeah, that
right. So all of these things is things that we can implement, right? I know, yes, you have social media, you can go on YouTube and find music, but what I'm saying, it should not be that widely, readily available. For instance, as I said that I alluded to a while ago, riding on a
but
bus and I'm hearing music with obscene language.
yeah, but it's there. But I was surprised. I thought I was saying, I mean, things on YouTube, I would have think that I have certain restrictions, but it don't. It's an open platform for everybody. It's what you choose to listen to.
Yeah,
Understand? Let's go back to the talking about the music on buses and private vehicles. We don't have no control over it, but everybody have a choice to what to listen. But if you put a ban to it, then then you have control. If you don't put a ban to it, then you would have no control over it. But at this museum place in public place, I know I was standing in front of Ariza a few mornings ago, and there a guy passing in town early morning. I'm talking about like after 8, and the music he was playing is unclean, but he played in the
yeah,
public. There's no
yeah,
control over it. I mean, you have police in town and stuff, but there's no control over it. So how are we going? How are we going about trying to rectify that issue? Going to rectify the issue, it's starting from we as individual, where we starting from and where we going with it.
yeah.
And you know it's going to be a problem because yes, you want to solve it, but doing the right thing always have a implication.
Yeah,
Implication
right.
So,
something doesn't be good.
so Eddie,
So,
I
so
will,
Glenn, yeah,
I will,
Glenn.
I will go back with the and put on my school teacher hat, and we'll speak to
Ah,
which speaks to the topic about Trinidad music and its effects on adolescent. But definitely, we know that is not because of um, the issue with the artists and that was raised. But basically, I think we all would agree is not only the so-called Trinidad music, but also to our soca and all of the different genres of music. Basically, the content that they offer is one of the major
Yeah,
outfits
yeah,
that affect.
yeah, yes. I agree. I agree with that 100%, because even some of our soca music, I can't remember the name and I wouldn't call out any name, but I remember I saw some time ago, maybe the last Carnival Cycles, I saw a song came out, and it was a collaboration where you had different artists singing on this song, and I was appalled by the nature of the content of the lyrics. You understand? And some of these artists that was singing some of these things was very recognized artists, were what we call our top artists. You understand? Um, so even in the context of the song that I was making reference to earlier on, that I saw, that was just spewing a lot of violence and we're showing brandishing weapons and so these things, in my opinion, should be unacceptable, right? I know it's difficult, so we could speak to that of the Trinidad music and it's influenced us, right? But you have to remember that once these things get normalized in Trinidad and it starts evening, then we, in turn, are going to try to create our own version, right? Of the because actually, if I remember correctly, and I don't want to call out no lyrics, you understand? But when you listen to the song, it was speaking to that of Grenadians and how it was pushing this kind of badness. So I guess maybe you could say that is a Grenada bad music. You understand? Or this, and I just think that these things you could only stop it through some form of legislation and from a nurturing standpoint is all about parenting because if you parent your children right and you give them the right guidance and foundation, then they wouldn't go in those directions.
Well,
Yeah.
what I would say,
Yeah,
standards.
yeah.
We don't have standards in a lot of instances, or we don't set the bar where we reject and accept certain things. And now I'm talking from whether it's top to bottom or bottom to top, whether it be from the legislative, whether the politicians, the trendsetters in terms of the artists, or even the regular person listening. So there is no standard set. So you listen, you do what you do, and there is no accountability or people taken to task for what is done.
But
So there would always be that.
I wanted to ask. I mean, we say so many things and we identify things, and so. But is there anything in our laws? I mean, that kind of perspective to really help our citizen, and in that vein, while you may not be a lawyer or an enforcer, what can be some of the ramification if that is being addressed?
Well, Glenn, remember I made a reference to the fact that um on in Grenada, right, there are certain things that is still considered against the law, right? Let's say, for instance, and a simple one is the use of camouflage, lewd behavior, or um indecent exposure, exposing yourself in public. As far as I know, is still against the law, right? So if let's say, for instance, I think to some degree, these things fall in the same category as, for instance, pornography. You understand? If
Yeah,
you, yeah, I see that it falls in the same category, right? And it's not just okay. We could speak about the violence, but even because I think all of us here are fathers of girls, right? You have to also address the fact that even the music, besides the violence, we have music that degrades young ladies, right? Um, and sometimes the sad thing about it is that is the same young ladies that gravitates towards the same type of music, right? So we have to speak to that as well because music is about the content, and if it's having a negative impact on society, whether it's violence or whether is the sexual or whether it's drugs or whatever the case may be, we have to be against such type of music. I know people say music is a reflection of the society and what happens in society, but music can be inspiring as well. And somebody alluded to Bob Marley. Bob Marley didn't grow up in the easiest affluent, most affluent areas. I sure he grew up in very rough times around very rough crowds, but he still sang positive music that we listen to up to today that still affect people's lives. You understand? So I think is something to speak on.
And the thing is that many a times we always want to belong
Mhm.
and to follow, to be heard in a certain position. So even in terms of the music and doing what you have to do, look at I've seen whether it's on Instagram, TikTok, or whatever.
Right,
If I may, it might not necessarily. I could only speak to my color. We're talking about blacks. If you
right,
look at most of them, Even young ladies that they're showing off their bodies and doing the lewdest thing as the in crowd. You want to tell me that there isn't something positive aspect of messages you could do? So even this selfie thing where they're doing there, and you ask yourself, what is that about? I'm not understanding. I'm not that old to say, well, oh, I don't know what I mean, or this is the in thing now. But that's just it. Everybody's in the in thing. Nobody's spreading out the positive word. Look, even with music, nobody's doing no original. Not that it's so much original, but it's just a matter of regurgitating what's been there, what they think would sell. This is what the people want, so this is what they do. So the violence, that they're killing it. Look, sure, violence is money, and whether we want to accept it or not, the people who sometimes gains the money and the control is not the one who being affected. Huh? They just
Well,
capitalize on it.
yeah.
You know?
Well, Glenn, I don't know if you were able to pick up the last of what you said. Saying, I don't know if you wanted to contribute to add something to say where that is concerned. But just you was talking about even with the TikTok videos and whatever the case may be, because it's it's not
Yeah.
just about violence, eh? It's about just content in general. And I
Well,
think all of us could, as fathers that all have girl children, I think there's something that I show all of us concern about too.
yeah, Eddie. What I would say,
Mm,
this thing is all, you'll find it in all nook and cranny.
yeah.
The important factor, the important element that I see is the ability to choose, and to choose wisely. Because I just be on TikTok too,
Yeah.
but it's what I choose to be a part of me.
Mm,
Because I mean, the TikTok offer a lot of different things, and is what you choose to do and how it affect you. Because I know, my experience on Friday riding on that bus. I mean, there were children in the bus, and based on what we're playing, they could have sing everything word for word,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
it wasn't a positive, being, but
Hmm.
you flip the script, and you have something positive, and it's like cattle by the tongue.
Right. Right.
So it's how they are able to process these things, and like we always say, negative things always tend to fly faster than positive things. But at the same time, I do not think that we should give up. Not saying that we are giving up, but based on our position, based on our ability, we have to continue to try to make inroads. We may think that sometimes things are falling on deaf ears, but the important factor is never give up.
So on this note, Glenn, as we come to close to the end of the program, it's time for us to wrap up. And Yusuf, maybe you could come in here. Let's start talking some solid solutions, right? Whether is we speaking to that of the Trinidad music, or whether it's the general influence of music. And I know one of the questions that has been out there and has been all over social media, speaking of social media, is that of whether or not we should allow this gentleman to come into Grenada and perform. So maybe persons can give their opinion on that as we look to wrap up as well.
Well, you see a big smile on my face. I was smiling. I was smiling because when you spoke of solutions,
Yeah.
I wanted I wanted to use. No, I wanted the famous phrase, "Don't go there."
Okay.
So I my one of the solutions is that, I mean, in hearing about whoever it is in Trinidad, I know a few person in discussion with them who do not know the individual is asking,
Mhm.
what is the name of the person, etc., etc. That is a kind of promotion in itself. So I would say,
Yeah.
don't go there. According to Dr. Francis Alexis, less you say, less you have to defend.
Yeah.
So you do not go there, you just do not
Mhm.
know. So if you do not know, it cannot influence you. And of course, generally, I
Yeah.
think adults and children alike, they know what a positive choice is. So you know you should not be
Yeah.
swearing, you should not be cussing, you should not be violent. We all know that. But when we
Hmm.
gravitate to it, and like my opening statement when I spoke of the power is in the tongue, the power can also be in the tongue to say that I shall not subscribe and I will use my energies, my power, my tongue, everything to glorify God. So I rest my case.
So this
You
is where
sir?
I chime in my
Yeah.
wrapping up option. As you say, don't go there in terms of highlighting that aspect of it. What I would say is we need to set better standards of quality, and whether it be legislation or otherwise, I'm sure a lot of those things are in place. It's a matter of enforcing. And despite all the negative, sometimes we focus so much on the negative, it overshadows the positive. There's a lot of youth that's doing good, whether it be in sports, athletics, academia. Let's highlight those. Let's make those individual the talking point for a lot, so that we push them in the forefront so people could see them as examples. You could see them as examples. You know, let's us as adults, as individuals, play a better part in and role in mentoring our children. As like I said, simple, finding out, have you sit down and have meals, find out how your day was, checking on your neighbor, that brotherly love, basically. And in so doing, you will make a difference. With respect to the music as it is content, let's push more of the positive ones and the love, and less of the violence and breakdown. Let's build each other up instead of breaking them.
I,
That's
Okay.
my take.
I saw I saw a
All
comment
right.
there from a
So
viewer.
yeah, yeah,
I saw a
yeah,
comment.
yeah. I
I
saw it as
I
well.
wish
Yeah.
I wish we could have gotten it. Kids nowadays have
Yeah.
access to
Yeah.
everything: porn,
Yeah.
inappropriate music, inappropriate movies, and content on social media. It's hard as a parent to filter everything, right? So, um, the comment is taken, and it would boil back to what I say is that we have to try to get to our students, our children, to make positive and healthy choices. So yes, it is exposed to them, but if they give them more to eat, they know that it should not be, they should be at the stage. But again, everything takes time. But I want to say on behalf of the team that we welcome that comment that was made.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Most definitely. And let me just take the opportunity to say, guys, that, and it's on the backdrop of even this last comment. We live in a world today that has become so much smaller because of social media and technology, right? And we can't get around the fact that we live in a world that our children have access to just about everything, as the person that put the comment says, whether it's porn, whether it's violence, inappropriate music, right? And this put even more meaning to the fact that we as parents, we have a tougher job to to navigate through it's like through a maze. You understand? Because it's like an obstacle course, right? And as parents, that's why I always stress that some of the things that most of the things that we discuss and the behaviors we discuss is more about symptoms, right? And these symptoms will start subsiding if we start addressing the root cause. And I think the root cause that we have in society is lack of parenting or inadequate parenting. And I know someone, one of our experts last week said to us that, okay, well, that's why we have to have these institutions and these social programs and so, right? But I think a lot of times these initiatives more or less is put in place to treat symptoms that have already start festering, right? And I think we have to find a way. You know the age-old question: what comes first, the chicken or the egg? You know, we have to go from the beginning, right? Because if we have solid parents, right, with good foundational principles and morals, they're in turn going to pass that on to their children, right? Obviously, you won't get the pushback from the children. For as young people, we feel we know it all. You know, we all go through that. We think we know better than the parents. Excuse me, right? But what I have found, even as now as a father and becoming a parent, a lot of things that I push against my mother on, and my grandmother and aunts and uncles, is that I return to those principles. You understand? That is the principles that I now pass on to my children. So that's why I think it's so important that in talking solutions, yes, I think legislation can happen. I think social programs would help, but it has to start from the home, whereby we have to know, we have to teach our children good principles, good foundation, good values, and that is where it starts. And once we go there, they would make better choices, right? The music that they consume, the friends that they keep, you know, all of these things is what I think is going to take them down a better path. So as we wrap up, guys, I want to say a special thanks to the listeners who came on today. I want to say we apologize again for our break, because we had some technical difficulties and a break in transmission. And I really want to take the opportunity to invite you to join us every Sunday, right? And to be a part of these important discussions, because I think the nucleus of our problem, our societal problems, start from the home, it starts from parenting, and as you say, we just need to find a way to eradicate these symptoms, and we need to, as we say, nip it in the bud. So thanks again to everybody who came out. Thanks to our panelists, Glenn, Yusuf, Jason, that had to leave us. Um, and and I want to just say good evening to one of my PT executive, Miss Danielle Letts. Thank you, Miss Letts. She just saying to us that it was a lovely program. Thanks for tuning in, and remember to keep sharing it and telling people about the program. This is how the conversation would continue, and people would know about this, so we could have a better conversation. And we hopefully next week people send in the comments earlier, so we could address them. Okay. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and have a good week.